Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
Do you ever get to the end of a movie where the hero had to make a difficult choice, and all you want to do is talk to people about whether they made the right one?
Watch an episode of Star Trek and spend the next few days thinking about the rights of synthetic beings like Data and the Doctor. I became a co-host of the Superhero Ethics podcast because I love those questions, and the people at Wendy's are tired of hearing me talk about them.
We're not a review podcast. We're more interested in questions the characters face and how different works approach similar questions. Sometimes we'll even go behind the camera, talking about how on-screen media gets made and how that affects what questions get asked, which ones don't, and who gets to ask them.
We hit a wide range of media: movies, TV shows, books, and video games.
You can find us under Superhero Ethics wherever you listen to podcasts or go to theethicalpanda.com. But you can also do far more. We love listener feedback and will happily talk about your questions or comments on air, and members get special bonus content.
Hashtag not sponsored by Wendy's.
Well, howdy folks, my name is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I'm Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of The Exorcist Minute, a show where we examine, extrapolate, and excavate the scariest movie of all time.
Each episode covers a single minute of William Friedkin's 1973 horror masterpiece, The Exorcist.
If you like deep dives, this show is the deepest.
Did you know the film's iconic theme song, Tubular Bells, wasn't written specifically for the movie?
Or that the 1973 audience members were throwing up and fainting in the theater before they ever got a glimpse of the demon?
What about all the crazy on-set mishaps, cast injuries, the director firing real guns?
Ooh. Ever wonder where Ouija boards came from or how they got their name? How about some history on the Catholic Church or the Roman rite of exorcism? Or maybe we can tempt you with some juicy demonology lore. Did you know that Pazuzu had an ex-wife? Find The Exorcist Minute on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you listen to your shows, or at theexorcistminute.com. Until next time, folks,
the power of The Exorcist compels you.
What makes a single movie become a phenomenon? What is it about certain films that arrive in theaters, scare the daylights out of us, and then stay with us, that transforms them into franchises spanning decades? Why does one horror film birth sequels, spin-offs, reboots, and TV shows, and others fade quietly into obscurity? Picture this. A young boy receives a doll for his birthday, only to discover that it's inhabited by the spirit of a serial killer. Elsewhere, a teenager falls asleep, only to find herself hunted by a burned man in a striped sweater who kills through dreams. And in another corner of horror lore, a puzzle box opens the doors to a realm of sadistic creatures who blur the line between pleasure and pain. These, taken on their own, sound mostly ridiculous. Child's Play, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Hellraiser. These three films became more than just singular stories. They evolved into worlds filled with iconic characters like Chucky, Freddy Krueger, and Pinhead, names that transcend the genre to become part of pop culture itself. But how? Why do some horror films captivate us so deeply we want to revisit their worlds again and again? Why do we keep coming back to the dolls, the dream demons, and the interdimensional sadists? Unforgettable villains, unique and terrifying concepts, marketing? Or is it just something deeper, something they reflect about us, about our society, about our fears? Today, we're going to explore this question by diving into these three legendary horror films as we take on First Frights this month on Sitting in the Dark. Welcome to Sitting in the Dark. I'm Pete Wright, your host this month, and the guy most likely to be standing in the corner with a flashlight asking if we're really sure we want to open the door. And with me, we have Keenan Diaz, our resident puzzle box enthusiast for sure.
Hello.
Kyle Olson, my one and only dream warrior.
It's all child's play.
And Tommy Metz III, our Chucky, not because he's tiny and doll-shaped, but because he's clearly living with someone else in there.
Happy to be here, Pete. Thank you for having us,
guys. I've been, as you know, I've been excited to talk about these movies, and for whatever you thought about them, remember in our last episode, you picked them.
So it's our fault.
It's not my fault. Yeah, that's right. I just want to make sure that we understand where the bar is set. The bar is set at your fault. I am curious, opening arguments. In thinking about this concept of First Frights, how did it hit you watching these movies? Before we talk about the individual movies themselves, what are your thoughts? Tom is actually raising his hand.
I am. I'm a real gentleman for a psycho killer. I thought, especially with Nightmare on Elm Street and Hellraiser, that I had these movies down cold, that I knew them inside and outside. I've seen them. I've grown up on them. I was wrong. I have not seen these movies in, I guess, forever, and I've never seen Child's Play. I just thought I'd seen Child's Play. So this was really interesting and an exciting look back to be like, that's what they spent all that time on? Wait, what?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And still, I get the iconography, iconicism of it all. And I'm excited to talk about it.
Well, it was 80s-tastic. That's one thing that I'm with Tommy. I thought I knew these really well, and then watched it. I was like, oh, I did not remember a lot of the details. But boy, those women and their helmet hair. Wow.
Johnny Depp and his pastels.
Yeah, I mean, it's very much of its time. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to sort of to dig in, because it hit me in different places seeing it now, as when I saw all two of these. I had never seen Hellraiser before as a teenager.
Yeah, I had seen Nightmare on Elm Street and thought I was pretty well prepared for that. But yeah, going back and looking at it, I was surprised. I gasped aloud quite a lot. But Hellraiser and Child's Play were new to me. And the way that I was approaching this was sort of looking at the design of these creatures, essentially, right? Like, what is it about these that you could see them being portable? So seeing it through that lens was really interesting. And there's some similarities, and in some ways, Hellraiser stands out the most because that is the least screen time of all of our big bads. But in other ways, you're like, oh yeah, I could definitely see why people would follow this for 11 movies, which is pretty crazy when you put it down on paper. But yeah, these were very, very interesting. Very scary. I was really, really scared.
I was watching Hellraiser and thinking of you. I was like, baby,
yes.
was this too much? Was this with the too much of the pieces of face?
It was too much. It was too much.
A lot of
But,
hooks. A lot of hooks.
A lot of hooks.
So many hooks. Well, the premise of this thing, the thing that inspired me to choose First Frights was Halloween. Obviously, I mean, we had just talked about that in October, and the fact that it spawned so many movies, and I watched them way too close together. And I was surprised that you all picked Nightmare on Elm Street and Freddy Krueger instead of the sort of iconic, Michael Myers. And I believe that was driven first by Tom. So let's dig in a little bit to Nightmare on Elm Street. Why Nightmare, and what makes this one special? What makes it a spark? I guess we should open with Axis to Grind too.
Axis to Grind, everything looks a lot sillier.
Yeah.
Now that I remember.
Honestly, yeah.
Like, just a lot of the effects. I really applaud in all three of these films how much practical effects there are. But the other side of that is sometimes they don't work.
Yeah.
You're like, just because you film things in and play them in reverse doesn't make it look like they're coming together.
I remember there's a sequence when Freddy Krueger has really long arms, and I remember being terrified of that. And now it's not scary.
No.
I have that in my notes. The long arm shot of
Yeah.
Freddy was iconic for me when I first
Yeah.
saw it, because it looks silly now, but why it worked so well back then. And what I love about Nightmare on Elm Street is it does a couple things. Number one, it breaks rules.
Mm-hmm.
It creates all of these carnival atmospheres where you can pick up whatever you want to scare you, and he will make it come to life. Granted, it's a lot of boiler rooms and stuff like that, but whereas Halloween Man is just walking incredibly slowly behind you, same with Jason for the most part, and you're just sort of waiting for the kills, especially in Friday the 13th. In Nightmare on Elm Street, it's the lead up to those that are the most fun. It's a carnival, and it robs you of the one thing that you have to have all the time, which is sleep. I mean, there's
Right.
just no escape. And the escape from a nightmare situation sometimes is oblivion, and it takes that away from you. And so that's why it's my favorite.
I think that's a really good point. And I think it's one of the things, I was trying to figure out what are the major points. And I think memorable villain is a big one, right? The
Mhm.
fact that Freddy Krueger is such an interesting character, and the glove, when she pulls the glove out of the boiler in the basement, it still is just haunting. Like, that glove is a thing of substance in my memory. That works. But the fact that it has, like, the thing that is most scary is something universal for all of us.
Mhm.
The lack of sleep is I think, an iconic element that makes this thing something that people might want to re-explore.
Yeah, the idea that you are completely powerless in horror, right? That you cannot stop what is coming, that you are at the mercies of the whims of whatever it is. Where are you more like that in real life than in your nightmares, right?
Mhm.
I hear people, who are lucid dreamers. I'm not, but I don't know if a lot of them like are lucid enough to stop a nightmare when it happens. I hear a lot of people saying that it's more like I get to fly or I get to say these things I want to, right? But I think that is so incredibly wired into us of being so vulnerable, and sometimes even knowing you're in a nightmare and not being able to stop it.
Are they ever lucid enough to be able to turn around and say, "Are you still awake?" And then Johnny Depp says, "Yeah." I'm sorry, Tommy, I interrupted. Were you going to say something?
No, Keenan's idea is my favorite actual part of rewatching this movie. It's the post Tina death when what's her name, Nancy.
Mhm.
I'm starting to get Nancy Christie. Who knows? Nancy Christie, Andy. Right? Okay, I just have to keep those in my head. Nancy Christie, Andy. The post when she's in the classroom, and it slowly becomes more and more weird. And at one point, it becomes clearly weird, but she's not able to acknowledge it. She's still using human logic and rules, just like you would in a nightmare. You can't fly.
Mhm.
You can't do these things. You're being sort of tossed around almost in the of your own unconscious. So I thought that was incredibly uh, well done. That was really fun. And anytime they use, like, throughout the series, it's not a lot. They do a lot more in 3 Dream Warriors. But whenever they use tropes of dreams, like I can't get away, the carpet is sticky, the running away from someone doesn't work because of the long lens. All of that kind of stuff is really fun. And one of the films, I don't remember which one, they play on the idea of dream loops that we know now from science that you loop in dreams, and these two people are trying to get away and they keep running and they do it like 5 times. And then they finally realize, wait a minute, we've already been here before. That stuff is really smart and neat.
Kyle, where you've been notably silent.
Oh, I was just letting the people make their points. I find Freddy interesting in that as sort of like the third of the 3. So like we've already had Jason Voorhees, we've already had Michael Myers, and Freddy was created as a reflection off of them. Freddy Krueger is theatric. That's what the thing is different, as opposed to these stoic killers who are just interested in killing you. Jason maybe has a bit of whimsy because of the way he goes about it. He does some more. He goes a little above and beyond what you really need to do to kill those horny teenagers. But Freddy's having a good time.
Yeah, if he found a 45, he would stab you with it.
Yeah, right. He just wants his axe back.
Right.
But Freddy's having a good time, and that is terrifying in its own way. That this guy is like, that he is really enjoying the fact that he's doing it. He's not there to kill you. He's here to torture you until he's had fun, and then he's going to move on to the next person. It's a whole different level of bad.
Charismatic, and the fact that he is willing to demonstrate his invulnerability by hurting himself in front of you to let you know you can't get away. I'm full of maggots. Like, I'm going to open myself up and show you awful things. I want to add a piece of this that I think is a reason that I attached to this movie early, which is the element of heroism. The fact that this movie disposes with the person you think is going to be the principal character early on and gives us a new principal character who actually learns to control the environment and become an avatar for me as an audience member. I walk out of this film as a kid thinking, I bet I could learn to control my dreams. And I became fascinated by that. I think it's compelling universally to think about, as Keenan brought up, like the idea of lucid dreaming and the ability to control your dreams is something that is fascinating to me, and this movie tapped into that. And it wasn't until actually Dream Warrior, that was the third one, where we really get an army of people learning to be wizards in dreams, that you actually see what this movie, the tree that this movie seeded. That's great. And I think that's one of the things that makes this fascinating, right? That's I walked out of this movie wanting already to see another one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, true.
It's good you brought up the killing the seeming heroine, because that's obviously taken from Psycho and then followed up by Scream.
Mhm.
Very
Final
much
girl.
he loves that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I also like how much work they put into a backstory for it. So many of these things are just like he's angry at something and now he's killing. Like there's a whole other movie that we didn't get to see of Fred, the weird guy that lived in the basement, and then all the stuff that happened there, and then the trial and being released, and then the last group of teenagers coming together, or the parents of the kids coming together to take revenge on it. Like that's a whole movie in itself, and it's just quietly sitting in the background as we're moving on to this one. Like I appreciate that much, Wes Craven, that much storytelling to put into backstory.
And that is the Wes Craven promise. Almost every single one of his movies, as I've blathered on about before, are about the children paying for the sins of the parents. Every single Scream, everybody is always going back. You find out that the parents caused this, and now the children are back, are having to deal with it, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it is interesting, like following Tina and then seeing like her relationship with her parents, and then we get to see some of the other parents there, because like in Halloween we get to know we don't get to see Laurie's parents really at all, right? That they're sort of a non-entity. But here we sort of see them as very silly, and Glenn's parents are very silly, and then we get to see their reaction to these horrific ways that their children are being murdered in front of them, and Johnny Depp's soup pouring out of the bed, and we see his mother, who has only been a comic character until that moment, right? And then the way that Nancy's mother becomes a real character, as she starts to get to know like the sins of the parents have been passed along to her, and Ronnie Blakely becomes like more of a well-rounded character and a well-rounded performance, and she's not just for laughs, and then losing her at the end to another bed terror. Right, it's actually horrifying the way that Nancy seems to like see her mother as a person for the first time, just in time for her to lose her, potentially forever, and then be in a whatever we think is happening to them, this like permanent loop of seeing her mother getting killed for the rest of her existence. Not the ideal way of growing up, I guess. Is what I'm trying to say.
Well, it is an interesting thing, right? Because so many of these, I mean, these movies in particular, they're all 80s movies, right? And 80s movies are the movies where we need to talk about teenage anxiety, parental neglect, latchkey kids, right? Generational guilt. And I think it's, I mean, to that point, like we didn't get a whole lot of the I guess we got a little bit of the latchkey kind of vibe, because Nancy's mom's a drunk and not terribly attentive, and as you said, the other parents are silly, right? The only parent who we get that is responsible is the divorced dad, and he's responsible because he's a police officer, right? Like that is, I think, a really interesting thing, that this movie plays with that sort of parental child relationship in an interesting way, because so much of it depends on the third act, kind of second to third act twist, where it's the parents' fault. And that's unique to, I think, some of the movies in this, some of the other movies in the genre, in the place.
There were some interesting clues that I caught this time that I never caught when I first watched it. Like in the the English teacher is talking about Hamlet and about the lies that Hamlet's mother told, and about there's something rotten. There's always the priest at Rod's funeral. Let's not judge lest we be judged for things that others have. I mean, there's that theme continues, which is nice. I like that kind of throughway.
That's smart, Tommy. I didn't know this. Yeah. That's very good.
And in terms of movie monsters, there's rules. I got a lot of respect for that. I mean, like even the fact that if you do something in dreams, you could have it be like Tommy was saying, anything. You could go completely over the top into that, and obviously Freddy is very theatrical, but there are rules in terms of if you're holding something and you wake up, it comes back from the dream world. Like then if you hurt yourself, that wakes you up. I mean, all of these things. So it makes it so it's not a level playing field, but at least they're in the game. Like they can try and do some stuff. They're not. It's not complete. It's not just Freddy's not just gonna. The ground is now all lava. Now you burn the end.
Right. You have some tools.
Yeah.
If you realize that it's a dream, you can have some power.
Right.
In that, which is a very played up in 3, like Pete was saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think it is played up in 3, and I think Dream Hat is a thing that if I had an axe, it might be in wielded here because of just the way it unravels at the end, where she has the hat. That's a sign that the rule is followed. We now are aware of the rule, and then she grabs him, and we have that moment where she's looking around, he's not there, and then he jumps up from beside the bed. God, I would like just one other angle of that
Right.
to see him crouching.
2, 3,
Get
4.
ready.
It's me.
Yeah.
And comes out, and that from that point forward, leading all the way to sort of the coda, I feel like the film opens the question: is she really in real life at that point, or is she still in a dream? And it makes me question actually the veracity of that rule, because I'm not sure we ever get a break from then on. It may be that she just didn't wake up.
Yeah, the problem I have with some of the imitators of Nightmare on Elm Street is that you get tired of this reveal of, oh, well, it's always a dream, so what does it matter? This one I never do, and it just haunts me the more we get into. I'm waking up within a dream and waking up within that dream, waking up within that dream. So somehow they compound. I'm not sure exactly how the movie is doing that, and where other ones I roll my eyes and get bored with it, but. Yeah, but that very, very quick dream at the end, where it seems very happy, that's just the right note to end on it, like making it very quick and not necessarily lingering around for what does that mean? Just having that moment, that emotional payoff of like, well, they're damned here forever, I guess, or whatever's going on.
And Freddy's a car. My favorite moment.
How Freddy learned to be a car.
So if we're going to wrap up the key points, key lessons for why we think this movie sparked a big franchise, how would you sum it up?
Oh, I would say one thing we haven't said yet is that Robert Englund is having a whole lot of fun playing that character. And maybe because of the meta nature of him, you're able to see both the character as scary and the performer as the performer, right? You see the character and the performer. So you want to see both of them continue on as opposed to, just the monster.
Yeah, and we do see like they do beat the monster supposedly, except that we know that the monster is about to become the star. So that this is the shift that is happening in a lot of these movies, where it's not about the heroic protagonist and final girl and stuff too. It's about the monster, because you've now built into this thing that he can come back because it's a dream. Like, you don't die, so you can. It's it's like you built in sequel energy. That I think even better than I'd say than one of our other two movies.
That's I think a great point, because I mean, we don't have to have a traditional final girl win. We end on a very down note in this movie, right? She loses
with one of the most ridiculous special effects gags, like
through the little window.
Yeah, through the window.
Oh, that terrifies me so much. I love it.
That one weirdly stands up for me while the long arms don't.
Some of the things that are like the coming out of the wall. I mean, there's so many like that even simple effects that are really, really good. And the head in the water, which is an iconic thing, whatever too. And then just that dummy getting pulled through the little window. Like that's the last thing we end on. Okay,
it would be cool if it went. I think two other things that is the theme music. Is straight up Halloween iconic, which is great,
and it's little childhood rhyme too, like going on.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. There's something so primal about this movie that fear, going against my last podcast host, where I was all about horrors of being an adult. This is obsessed with horrors of everything that scares you of being a kid, and to hard bake it in. One thing I did not remember at all is her saying that's what it reminded me of, that old Jump Rope song. He's retconning a fairy tale like theme song in his own movie, which just makes it feel like baked in. It's cool.
It's so smart.
Neat. Yeah,
That is
it's a new way to do
that's
it.
a really good point, Tom, that he is that it's completely opposite of OK Boomer. That it's about you as an adult feeling the fear you never shed as a child.
Right. Yeah.
That's special.
I have one other thing that I want to say. What I did not remember at all, and which I loved because it's such a weird, different movie, is the whole Kevin McAllister booby trap element at the end. And I looked it up. I was like, were we going through a booby trap boom at the time? This was 1984. Goonies was 1985. Raiders of the Lost Ark was 1981. Those are the first one. But then it occurred to me Wes Craven also loved booby traps in Last House on the Left. When the killers
right,
come
that's
into the house,
yeah.
the parents. So I was trying to find a boom instead. I think he just likes tying ropes. And stuff like that. She
So
just
Home
finds it.
Alone is ripping off Last House on the Left. Yeah,
But
you're right.
but
yeah.
Scooby
100%.
Doo originally was setting traps to catch monsters, so you know.
That is one that happened fast too. If you remember, like that montage of her setting up all that stuff took her about 2 minutes from the time she left her room to the bedside of her mom's room.
Yeah.
She hung a lot of traps.
She had
That was-
She had that book, How to Trap a Dream Monster. Or whatever. Like, okay.
Well, I'm so glad this kicked us off, and I think we should move in chronological order, which takes us next to Clive Barker's Hellraiser, 1987.
Oh no!
This is another one. This one I've seen. Well, we're also going in order of how many times I've seen them, most to least. And this one was not that often. I have not seen this movie often. And I remembered it as a Cenobite movie.
Mhm.
It is not
It is
a
not.
Cenobite movie.
That
This
starts with
It's
is-
about Frank.
Yeah, it's about Frank.
It
He's
really is. I did not
disgusting.
remember. I was just like, where are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. It also spawned a series, right? It spawned a lot of people who are interested in the movie. And I think the transition between 1 and 2 is built on those characters. My hunch is they did not know how big those characters were going to be and so I found it really interesting. I'm opening thoughts and axes to grind.
Yeah, Clive Barker was thought that the franchise would follow Julia, the stepmother, more than Pinhead, who became the breakout. So that's interesting. I really like that performance by this woman who plays Julia, but yeah, I was surprised how little of the Cenobites were in this.
That's interesting about the Julia thing because this is based off of The Hellbound Heart, which was a short story that he wrote. And there's no Julia in there. There's sort of a Frank surrogate, but then there's like totally different Cenobites. That's interesting. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean
Oh no, just my axe to grind is this is one of the most disgusting things I've ever seen. But it's very good. It was really enchanting, like mesmerizing. I didn't pause it and take breaks as I thought I was going to, and then hide that from you all and try to be a big boy. I couldn't stop watching it, but it is quite disgusting, and parts of my soul I didn't know could be disgusted. But yeah, it's quite a spell, and to see this as like a debut film by Clive Barker, who then was saying like he thought he was a hot shot and that he could direct a movie, and then he got on set and like he didn't know what the hell he was doing, and everyone just so nice to him, helping him out, and it's like oh, and this is what came out of that, like this pay on to teamwork.
Yeah, I was keen into of like this is the and I started watching it and we get to the like they get to it quick. Like, like they don't mess around. Like it's sort of like two guys sitting around having some tea in a box, and then suddenly there's like chunks of flesh on chains screaming through the air. Oh, they don't wait. Like we're in. Yeah, it's there in this movie is one really fantastic Outer Limits episode, and then one really pretentious art film, and the two of them go back and forth so many times. Like, oh, okay, we're in that one now. It's sort of like you have the thing of like bring me more, and it's the moral thing of like bringing people in to bring your dead lover back and stuff too. Very very anthology sort of thing. But then you also have like, ooh, look, it's a beetle crawling on top of a dirty sculpture. It's like, okay, all right, 9 Inch Nails, I get it. Like, Come on. I mean, that there's like one shot of the daughter, traumatized, like against the fence. That I was like, man, this was like this was like a Super 8, just like in the middle of the day, just running alongside. That's like pure indie film right there.
There was a shot where Frank has holding a rat and he slices it down like he's whittling it, like he's whittling a whistle
So
out of it,
weird.
like like a duck call. Weird, yeah. Like, what kind of person thinks of these things?
I know, like
I know we're a horror
his
show,
girlfriend and
I'm so
is
surprised by these images.
is like getting it on with her husband, and he walks up and is just like, "Huh, you like this? Like, would you like a slice of rat?" It was so weird.
I know you're busy, but do you have any more
Yeah.
suits I can bleed through?
Right, that too.
He bleeds through so many suits. It's ridiculous. Like the first shirt he puts on is a white dress-up shirt. I'm like, that's what you picked? You can't find one red shirt. I thought something that I didn't remember was just how weird the normal parts are.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you're saying that Clive Barker didn't know what he was doing, I get it. The end thing is iconic, and I'm glad he made it. And I've read a ton of Clive Barker. He used to be my favorite author at one point, but like that dinner party is the weirdest dinner party. Like, has Clive Barker ever been to a dinner party? Like, everyone's just so weird, and he's like looking around, and she's wiping blood. He's like, "Do you want a cookie, little girl?" Like, is this just First Take Charlie? Like, what are we doing? We're printing the run-throughs. Like, and then it has that other weird 80s thing of like so much of the sound has been redone and redone really poorly. And so that also makes it gives like another weird element of unreality to it.
Yeah. It's not quite like Lynchian, because I think in Lynch you feel that he does have control, or these things that we think are weird like must mean something. So it's not quite over to that era, but it's close. That dinner party that I had just forgotten about until you reminded me, where the boyfriend, who maybe this is the first time that Kirsty's meeting him, like has a cigarette in his lip and then tongues it into his mouth and then flips it back out and takes a puff on it. So
apparently,
like,
that's the way to her heart, because
she looked at him like,
right. And yeah, that's just the normal world. Those are not Cenobites or anything. So I mean, yeah, Clive Barker is this like BDSM person in his real life, and like was a gigolo at sex clubs and stuff like that, and so you might be more at home with the Cenobites than the normal people who get married and have dinner parties. Yeah.
Well, and Clive Barker as a filmmaker, like this film, I think is representative of it, and other films that he's done even more so, is a litmus test for his personality. Like, it just feels like it exudes who he is. I see so much of of my impression of Clive Barker's fingerprints in his movies than maybe any other filmmaker besides Steven Spielberg. Like, it just feels Barkerian. Is that what we call him?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
it does. Like when you're watching like Nightbreed, you're like, if Clive Barker didn't direct this, he meant to.
Yeah.
Like it just
Right.
has that same kind of weird, slightly campy, really gross, really practical, messy. Let's just get to the good part kind of feeling.
A little bit, and not quite Cronenberg, but there is some pretty disgusting body stuff.
And Cronenberg, who's in Nightbreed.
Who's in Nightbreed.
Right. He plays one of the big bads. That's funny.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? So this film, in the non-disgusting parts, like this film is doing some, I think, some interesting things, right? Because it's exploring how weird and awkward it is, because it's Clive Barker, dealing with changing dynamics of family, right? We have the stepmom relationship. We have dad not understanding his role, manifest in his role being taken over as a skin suit, right? Like, so many of those things, those sort of metaphor writ large, I think are really compelling in this movie. The Cenobites end up becoming sort of the Clive Barker's religious symbols. Is that kind of like I would say he's attributing worship to these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And
they're like sexy Cthulhu's.
There's sex.
You know,
God, okay.
as if Cthulhu
Yeah.
wasn't sexy
I
enough.
can't.
Right,
I-
right. That's where we're stopping.
Yeah.
Can't talk. Writing note for new shirt.
Less tentacles and more like leather straps.
That's right.
Mhm.
And I think that's an interesting thing that we get all of the, like, this movie is exploring the sins of the family and paying those dues by the end, right? Like everybody gets exactly what they need at
Right.
the end.
Yeah, where Kirsty recognizes that her father has been skin suited by Frank by him saying "come to daddy" in this sexual way, and that's her sort of tell. Right, so her realizing what's happening to her because of these Clive Barkerian characters who cross over into sadomasochistic incest talk, right? I know a lot of people say like, oh, we call themselves daddy now or whatever, but I think in the 80s especially that was like a shocking, crazy new new thing that Clive Barker had introduced to us, and that's where she grows up. Again, not a great way to be growing up.
Yeah. That's what she took into her relationship with the cigarette boy.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's my
Things are
one
great.
axe is his sweater at the end, which is like this weird Cosby pink and orange sweater that
Oh,
I
when he
want
takes
to
off
be.
the jacket to give it to
Yeah,
her. I was like, oh
yeah,
my.
yeah. I want to be thinking about this, the fact that this homeless man who eats crickets turns out to be some kind of Jabberwocky, but instead I'm looking at that guy's sweater.
Can I just
The most
can we-
random.
yeah, can we
like,
poke at that
Yeah.
for a minute? What's the deal with a homeless cricket guy who turns into Bone Dragon?
like
Tom, you
yeah,
know, right?
I was fine in terms of like I as much as Tommy will be shocked to hear this, but like I did not care about the rules. Like there's a box, you open it up, weird sex demons come out, and it's like, all right, great, got it, good. I don't need any more than that. And then this weird homeless guy is like, also I'm a weird bone thing too. And you're like, okay, like
Right, but he's not a Cenobite, right?
no, just
He's some
another
other guy.
thing.
Yeah.
Is he
You
the
have-
boss?
you have
Is
the
he like
lore of
the
this?
He's not the
agent?
boss. Leviathan turns out to be the boss in the second one. We learn a lot more about the Cenobites, especially through 3. And then
Okay.
after that,
Does
starting
Cricket
around
Guy
4,
come back?
Cricket Guy does come back. He
Oh.
ends up delivering the line. It's not the same guy, but it might as well be the same guy. But what is your pleasure, sir? Starts to become the opening
Oh.
and closing line every time.
Yes.
Okay. But then starting on like 4 or 5, they become what they started doing is they were buying other screenplays and then just throwing Pinhead in them like a Rod Serling. Like there'd be a dick
Kramer
doing a bunch
versus
of
Kramer
dick
versus
things,
Pinhead.
and then
Yeah.
he'd show up and be like, "Stop being a dick, fishhook." And that was it. So it became less and less. But like by then, we know who all of the Cenobites were. One of them was actually a child. Like we learn all of this stuff in kind of an interesting way. That's why I think it's crazy he didn't think that Pinhead and the Cenobites would be the breakouts, because that's the only thing for me that is worth really hanging on to, is there's so much potential lore that can come in that, and they really go into a ton of it in the second one. Hellbound, it's incredibly restrained by budget. They shoot big and they do not hit, but there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there.
Yeah, that's what I was reading, that he wanted to kill all the Cenobites off at the end of 2, and then he kept trying to kill Pinhead back. He wrote some novel in the 90s where he's like, Pinhead will be dead, I swear. Pinhead is really dead this time. Nobody can do anything about that. And apparently he really resented the name Pinhead, where in the movie, that's not his name. It's just the priest or the cold man or things like that. Much more, badass words than Pinhead.
Fans got the job of naming everybody. Pinhead, Chatterer, Butterball, and then the one woman I think was either Deep Throat or Open Throat.
Yeah.
Or something like
Oh.
that is what fans just decided. Yeah.
As they do.
Yeah.
They do. Sorry,
So-
Clive.
What is it about Pinhead that you think people really gravitate towards? In this first one, he doesn't really even stand out amongst the 4 or 5 Cenobites that we see, right?
He gets the lines, and by lines I mean any lines, and the iconic "we will tear your souls apart and we have such sights to show you" are really iconic. You know what I mean? Those are really big. The idea of just this forbidden underworld, very sex clubby kind of feeling of this just outside of the world. I mean, because they show up, they're always just like just on the other side of the wall. The idea that there can be such subversion and deviance, if you want to. I'm not trying to shame. I'm just sort of saying Cenobites aren't into BDSM. Cenobites, the basic idea of what we kind of learn about them is that they did enter. It's not hell. They're called priests of hell, but it's not really hell. It's called the labyrinth, and that's where Leviathan lives. Anyways, they were in search of such crazy physical experiences that they fritzed out all of their nerves and can no longer tell the difference between pleasure and pain. And that's what they're bringing everybody in to do. That's a horrific and incredibly deeply interesting idea. And I think that that's what the staying power is.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that sticks with the memorable villains, of course. Like, I think it doesn't even matter what they don't tell me in this first movie. I am compelled to think about these guys when I leave the theater, right? Incredibly innovative concept. When the wall opens in her her hospital, worst hotel stay ever. I'm riveted because there is something like it's something about that multiversal concept that this is playing with, this idea that just on the other side of this wall is something that I can't touch, I can't see, but I know is there. That's compelling, right? That's fascinating. The fact that the visual distinctiveness of the Clive Barker sort of universe is off the charts, and all of that equals this is an obviously expandable mythology, let alone the fact that he already had done it in other form, like he had been writing the books, right?
Not a ton. There's not a ton of Cenobite books. There's the Hellbound Heart, which was the beginning. They get a mention. They're called the Surgeons or the Great Surgeons in the Great and Secret Show. Other people,
But they
wrote
came
a
out
lot
before
of Cenobite
the
stuff.
movie came out, right?
The Hellbound Heart, yes, correct.
Yes. And so I think just knowing that there was something to play off of, it was such an like watching this movie. I didn't love it, but man, it just felt so obvious to me that there would be more. So obvious because of all those things.
Yeah, I think I kind of loved it, even though it was there are
So
images that
deeply
I want
unpleasant.
to
Yeah.
unsee. Yeah, but just the vibe of it and the world of it, and yeah, even the human characters and the mess they get themselves into, and yeah, like it's certainly not necessarily repeatable. This idea of like Frank rebuilding his body through blood. Like I wouldn't want to see that in the part 2, part 3, part 4, but that pathos that he's going through of like, I need you to kill for me. And oh, now I know it's working because as I'm getting more disgusting, now I have nerves and I can taste again and smell again. Like, that's really compelling stuff. And I know like this is kind of Lovecraftian stuff that we're talking about. Oh, the sights that I would see, but Lovecraft does this thing that I both love and hate, which is just trust me, you can't imagine it, right? It's
It'll
so
drive you,
horrifying.
it'll drive you insane.
Right.
The
And
door
I
opens
couldn't
all the way.
even, yeah, I couldn't even write it down. And then Barker is actually trying to show you this stuff that
Oh, that's
Lovecraft is
such a great
hinting at,
distinction. You're
yeah,
exactly right.
I don't know if that's necessarily like stronger, but he's trying, and yeah, I don't think I'm going to go down a Hellraiser rabbit hole and watch all other 10 movies because it's not for me. But I am fascinated by it. I would love to hear more about it.
It is, yeah, it is interesting that, like you said, that Pinhead is the one that popped because he has maybe 5 minutes of screen time. I mean,
Can we just acknowledge that Kyle just said Pinhead popped? I just want to make sure I'm not the only one who heard that.
No, he popped.
Okay.
But there is power in stillness. Because that is one of the things that I found so interesting about them is they're so menacing and so terrifying and so like on a different, like they don't even regard you as a person, like you're meat like that, but they barely ever move. And it's just like, it's so otherworldly and so odd that already you're just creeped out just because they're in the room with you and not with an axe trying to do it. They're not with making puns with the knives on their hands. They're just standing still and regarding you, and it is terrifying. When they start moving, it's less terrifying.
It is.
When they're sort
exactly
of
like
right. As the house is bringing down, they're sort of wandering through the halls. I'm like, oh no, you're sort of undoing.
Don't put them in a hall.
No, don't.
Like the
don't
least
just,
scary setting.
Yeah, exactly.
For a
Like just
Cenobite.
slowly lumbering towards you. I was like, oh no.
But here's a testament to creature design. When in the hospital tunnel, that creature with the weird fat face and the stinger that comes just like winding its way with its hands down the hall, I thought that was a legit cool creature design. It's weird. It's such a strange thing to have in the middle of this movie. I'm not sure what it's trying to say. And I think they try to explain it, and it's a little hand wavy for me. But I actually really liked that sequence.
I think they spend too much time on it.
Yes.
It's filmed.
Yes.
It's filmed well, but it's filmed well way too long.
Yes.
And it's just not convincing and stuff. I like the idea of it more. Do you want to know what that character's name is?
Sure.
Yes. Spiky.
The engineer.
That's not would not have come up with that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
He's Thomas the Demon Engine.
Yeah. as like a random creature, that was good. Like you said, I think they spent and they show us way too much of it for way too long. But just like she goes in, a weird thing that chases her, and she barely gets away. Whew. But then it comes back, and you're like, okay, like I understand you have a budget, you built this thing, and you want to use it again, but like,
yeah. We don't want
I get it. I'm wrong. You guys are right. It's terrible.
Here, I'll give you this. I found half of it scary. Like the back half, you see the arms flying around.
Oh.
Yeah, the top half. Honestly, the bottom was just like this sort of just weird sort of head just sort of lolling around. I'm like, But like the weird thing at the top with the stinger and the arms flailing around.
Great.
That was creepy.
That's so Barkurian.
Yeah. Are you trying to coin that?
Is it taking?
We'll slap a trademark on that so nobody else can use it?
Yeah. I think we've litigated this one in particular. I think why it became a franchise. I feel like it's got a lot going for it. Whatever you think of the movie itself, boy, does it have a lot of the elements that kind of lead to it.
Style.
So
there is some interesting things. There was a reboot of sorts on Hulu recently, like in the last couple of years, and it's no Pinhead. There's Pinhead-like things, but it's a complete offshoot, sort of a redo, and it's interesting. It's got some stuff to say. Instead of going down the idea of sexual deviance or abnormal like this, it talks about addiction, drug addiction, and it makes some of the same points. And it's called
Hellraiser.
It's just called straight up Hellraiser. Yeah, and it's got some interesting things. I wish it was better, but
don't we all?
Yep.
And with that, we move just 1 year into the future with Child's Play.
I assumed I'd seen it, and I got a little bit in, and I saw the cop, and I was like, "Oh, I've never seen this. I know that guy from other things."
Yeah, because he lives in the Fright Night house.
That's right.
So who else is this a first time for?
Mm-hmm.
Keenan and Tom.
Oh, yeah.
And Kyle, you're shaking your head. I don't know what that means. Is that you?
Oh, sorry. I'm under the path of air Cenobite. They're just flying.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Yes, Jersey drones have come to Kyle's
I'm not sure when I
house.
saw it. Because I was too young to see it in theaters, but I'm 90% sure that I watched it on like Cinemax or HBO late at night. I 100% watched it as a teenager.
Yeah, I thought I had seen it when I was young in little bits and pieces, and then I think what I had seen is Child's Play 2, which I was reading ends in a Chucky factory, a good guy factory. So I think that's the one that I kind of half saw as a kid on VHS, but I don't think I've seen any of this.
So the thing I didn't remember was any of the voodoo stuff, which
That
it turns
aged
out
perfectly.
right.
No.
That's what I was. It's just there's a reason I forgot about the voodoo stuff, and I'm actually curious. It's been a long enough that I don't remember how they carried on that particular bit of lore in the subsequent films, because there's got to be somehow we get crazy murderous person in the doll. That part didn't play for me, even though I think the concept of having this anthropomorphized murder doll is interesting to me. There's some sort of frivolity, this frivolousness to it that is memorable. We're talking about the memorable villains. Like, this is a big one, I think, with a bullet. The fact that it's also kind of meta commentary on consumerism and marketing to children and anxieties of single parenthood, right? Like, that's what is a single parent to do when they work at a Macy's and don't make enough to get this ridiculous doll. And so I think all of those things really play for me. And the create a doll that is also a murder doll, the genesis of it is about the only thing that would be an X for me. Other thoughts?
There's non-conditional families non-conventional families in every single one of these movies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
80s, baby.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah,
It's a
that's
whole
the
new world.
80s.
Yeah.
Right?
Ordinary
I
People,
guess
Kramer versus
you did
Kramer,
already
yeah.
say that. I'm sorry, Pete. Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought I was.
Phil, you can have credit.
We're keeping
I
the theme
don't
going.
know.
Keep the theme going.
Oh, rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah, the only axe I have so far of all three of these is the kind of ridiculous unbelievability of the way the police work here and how they don't contribute anything to it. Somehow in A Nightmare on Elm Street, when it's Nancy, like, hey, I'm saying this crazy thing, why don't you believe me? And they convincingly don't believe her. But in Chucky, the only solution is that something's going on with the doll, and they even like say that out loud several times, and the police are just so callous to when poor Aunt Maggie gets killed or commits suicide or whatever they think is going on, and they're just like, oh yeah, kids in the back, go through this crime scene.
Oh yeah, there's so many cops.
Right,
There's so many
right.
cops in that house.
Right, and then Chris Sarandon's partner, Chris Sarandon gives him this hammer with blood on it, and he's like, "Why do I need to get that for?" And it's like, "Because it could be in the murder weapon." And the guy's like, "Oh,
funny. Wink.
Why don't you give me a hammer without blood on it?
All right.
I love Brad Dourif for one enormous reason, is mainly because of my love for Exorcist 3. He plays sort of the voice, and because the guy that plays Father Karras, who's in it, isn't as broad or maybe good as an actor, they gave it to Brad Dourif as the Gemini killer. So I've always loved him. This was the least enjoyable for me. I've never been interested in dolls coming to life, like Trilogy of Terror or stuff like that. For some reason, I'm just sort of like, okay. And I think to go with Kyle's idea of there is fear in and power in stillness, he is already what Freddy Krueger becomes. When you're like, okay, there's so little room for anything that I was just sort of, I had trouble with this one. This one was the one that I was just sort of like, oh, come on. Although, and then every once in a while, when like the lady in the elevator is like, ugly doll, he's like, F you. I was like, that's awesome. Okay, so I'm glad I stuck around. I get the iconic nature of it. For some reason, killer dolls, killer things like this just doesn't do it for me. I don't know why.
What about the killer doll that's right behind you?
Okay.
I see what you did there.
Biting.
I don't know. I'm not. I don't care if you don't like killer. But I was gonna say I'm so bummed you don't like killer dolls. I don't care.
Maybe that's not wrong. What are other killer dolls on the market?
Well,
The one
so
from
I think
Poltergeist.
The one from
Annabelle
Poltergeist.
doll.
We love
That
that
actually is terrifying, but it doesn't
Yeah.
talk. I think that's the thing. When you talk and make like crazy little remarks, and it's just like, you shouldn't tell people where you hide your voodoo dolls, kid. It's just like,
well, the spiritual sequel to the Child's Play franchise is, of course, Megan. And I think you could make the case that Megan did it better. Megan learned from the sins of its ancestors.
Yeah. So much so that I think there's a Chucky version that is now AI. Like there's a
Yes.
one of,
Yeah.
one
The
of
Aubrey
the,
Plaza
one of
one.
the
Aubrey
versions
Plaza
of
one.
Chucky's
Yeah.
is like that's the idea.
Yep. And yet I think there are gems to mine in this movie. First of all, the kiddo is fantastic.
Yeah, that kid.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah. I was of sort of two minds of this, seeing it as a grown up and as a parent, deeply triggering of like this poor kid who is telling the truth through the entire thing and no one will believe him, and like he gets it worse than anybody except for the people who die.
Right.
But he gets to live with all that trauma on his birthday for the rest of his life. So that was like good. on one side of it. But the other side of it, I think this is the best movie of these three.
Really?
I honestly, like, as I'm watching it, I was like so impressed at just the filmmaking of it. Like, taking aside, like, okay, obviously we're in a horror podcast. There's murder. So murder bad. I'm going to come down firmly on murder is bad.
Should we put that? We'll just put that in the boilerplate.
Yeah.
Murder bad. Welcome to Sitting in the Dark.
But that fall from the window is chef's kiss. Perfect. She comes out of there, and as the stunt turns her body to hit the pad, and then they impact on I was like, ooh, that's beautiful. Like that was
It's like
so
old
well
school.
done. Yeah. And the
Yeah.
special effects of the doll and the
Yeah.
running, and the first person running around. Like as much as it was like, oh yeah, it's a killer doll. Like it's sort of, because we know so much, it's like, can we get to it? Like, you don't have to do all this and mess around. But it was really creepy, of the idea that you're home and you hear something pitter pattering around, and they do that first person perspective of peeking around and going back and forth. I mean, even cars exploding. I mean, like they blew up a house. I mean, like I guess I've gotten so desensitized now that some of the stuff is CG that I'm like, they really went to Chicago and blew up a house. Like
The car wreck is legit.
the car wreck is
Yeah.
legit. That's what I'm saying, all the way through. And there's, there's a couple of shots even that I kind of went, well, how the hell did they do that? Like, there's a shot in the hospital of Chucky walking across the floor, and I was like, whoa, what? Because it's that combination of like, there's like 10 different Chuckies, and they do such a good job of sort of cutting between them. Yeah, I was really impressed with just the filmmakingness of this, even though at the end of the day, I don't know if I want to watch it again, because I was like, I feel so bad for that kid, and my heart was torn out for him. But
yeah, there's actors playing Chucky with the mask. There's puppets. There's animatronics. It's that thing that, like, I don't know, after Jurassic Park and Babe, they just decided, like, no, to CG everything, right, and just do everything that way. But instead, this is like this all of the above approach, which I think really works. So sometimes you get little Andy looking out his hospital window, and you see just a glimpse of Chucky, like, oh god, oh god, oh god, yeah. But one thing about Andy that I think is interesting is what age they decided to make him, because I had remembered him as being sort of like an Elliot in E.T., but he's not. He's much younger, much more vulnerable, not able to, not precocious the way a lot of movie kids are, right? Like appropriately inarticulate, right? He knows what he believes, but he can't explain it, and that adds to some of the reality of the situation, right? And he's like, no, I really know what I heard. I really know this, and nobody believes me, not even mom.
I think I think you nailed one of the real gems of this movie, is that the stuff, even without the doll, there is some stuff that's legitimately horrifying, right? And I think, listening to children has become a thing we collectively, culturally, have had to learn how to do because of real life bad stuff. And that's one of the reasons I think watching this movie now is, has a sting to it. It's interestingly triggering because of all the lessons we've had to learn. So
with that
one of the
doctor
gifts
pulls
of
out that
time-
syringe, I was like,
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah, just horrible. Even to the point of, when he comes on The Voice and says, I think I've seen enough, after 2.5 minutes, and they take him and put him in an asylum, like the worst children's hospital ever.
It's Reagan's America.
Yeah. So I'm behind a lot of the concepts in this film, and I think I can see why it's compelling. Again, we've got all the same stuff, right? We've got our memorable villain, we've got our expandable world. They end it sort of perfectly. I don't remember how they transition into other movies, but
before we talk
in it.
about sort of where we go from here, because I sort of read the synopses of a bunch. I'd seen a bunch of them, but I read the synopsis. But I want to talk a little bit more about the sort of iconic nature, because as we have what we have named Pinhead, the Cenobites and their other reality, otherworldly, just creepiness, and then we have Freddy Krueger, still high on the pun game, having a good time, murdering people. But Chucky's just a jerk in this. Like, I sort of think of Chucky now from Bride, like later on, Bride of Chucky, where he's like quippy and like mean spirit. And they did a whole series of like him invading other movies, like he invades Psycho and that kind of stuff. And he's like murderous and funny. Yeah, they're really short. He's murderous and funny and that kind of stuff. But here he's just kind of a dirtbag, criminal. Like there's really not much to him. Like the big moment is just like him like So when he suddenly comes up, like, he just like calls her a bitch or whatever, and then he starts stabbing.
That's
It was like,
shocking.
oh yeah, it's shocking. But at the same time, well, he's just he's just a guy. I mean, like, I mean, as he's supposed to be like this, this super serial killer they've been cautioning. I'm like, yeah, he's just kind of a dirtbag criminal.
Yeah, that sequence where she discovers the batteries are still sealed in the box, that's a really expert scene. Just in how we're controlling the camera and controlling what we're seeing. And then, when he attacks her, and that the swearing, just like the 1980s actual serial killer swearing coming out of that little cherub's mouth is really, really frightening and really shocking. And it's not funny. That is just terribly not funny. And there's sort of an undercurrent that he, they call him like the Lakeshore Strangler or whatever, but he's probably a sexual criminal as well, and there's violence against his women, and that's sort of in the undercurrents. Like, oh, this doll is more than just like quippy and doing puns and killing people in funny ways. Like, this is a really, really bad thing that's in this doll.
He calls her a slut.
That's what it is.
In his,
awful.
In his outfit.
Awful. Yeah.
But that's, I guess my thing is, of the three of these, I really don't get why Chucky became a thing. Like, looking at all, like it's just like it seems like it's done, and yet I know it just goes on and on and on and on.
Because and this is what I'm getting to with the expandable universe, right? Because when you take this doll and you have this doll that swears, you've sort of ripped off the Band-Aid of other things you want to do with a doll that can do anything, and then it becomes an adult filmmaker's toy. And I think that's what ends up happening with the other movies. The fact that we have a movie that's called The Bride of Chucky is a testament to that fact, right? That we're going to do anything we want with his doll because there are no limits. He's a murderous, swearing doll. Let's see what fun we can have with him. I think that becomes the playground, right? That and what I don't know is how much of this is just like, and for all three of these movies, I think there's some question of this. Like, how much of it is the people demanded more of these movies versus, you know what? These movies were low budget, high return the first time around. If we market the hell out of the second one, who cares what's in it? Let's just see what happens, right? As opposed to Halloween 2, which was a direct continuation of the first movie. Like, they had more story they wanted to tell. Like, that's an interesting thing for me. Some of these are created with series in mind. I don't get that with Chucky. I think it was incidental or accidental.
Yeah, and there's a lot of fights about the authorship of Chucky, right? The director, Tom Holland, says it was him, it was all him. And John LaFia, who's one of the writers, but then Don Mancini, who ends up taking over the franchise. I guess I don't know enough about the history, but the fans seem to agree with his authorship claims that it's really his story. But he had a whole other different idea for Chucky originally. It was Blood Buddy. And it was a doll. It was a doll that you could buy off the shelf, and he would bleed like Betsy Wetsy would wet herself. Like,
why would you want that? I've known some weird kids, but like,
oh my god.
Yeah, well, I think Tom Mancini is a weird guy from what I gather, and he he does the bride of and the curse of and the seed of and all of that, and gives Chucky a non-binary kid, and puts gay subtext into it, and I think that the fans really like that. So that's interesting. It's in all of these movies we have like in Nightmare 2 is a queer movie, right? And there's something about like all these monsters that we could be like, oh, there's sort of a queer angle to this, a gay angle to this, like I don't know what that is, the theatricality of them, the fun of them, but yeah, I think it's telling that like you know the word Chucky, but like, oh, Chucky 2 and Chucky 3 more than Child's Play,
Yeah.
right? Like
he,
yeah, exactly. Like he kind of overshadows the rest of it. It's the Chucky show.
Yeah, because I think the first three are still about Andy.
Right,
because like the second one, he comes back and still is trying to get Andy. They kill the mother off because apparently maybe she didn't want to come back or whatever, and then now Andy's in a foster home. Like, man, it's like give the kid a break. Like, and so then the third one, like same thing, like the company's like, hey, there's still some viable parts inside this machine. Let's bring it back again. And now Andy's in military school, and I think after that they're like, let's just break this whole curse thing and just make it be that he's just an evil thing and the dollies can kill whatever he wants. It's like it's not about going after the kid anymore. Then it just becomes, Gonzo.
Andy Barclay is plays or Alex Vincent plays Andy in the TV show, right?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Like through 2023 as an adult.
Oh, wow.
He's in every one of these, it seems like. This is really his jam.
Was he
or his Cross the Bear,
reboot, right?
Let's see. He was in
We don't
Cult
choose
of
when
Chucky.
fame finds us, right?
Yeah. Cult of Chucky, Curse of Chucky. I'm going back in time, and then Child's Play 2 and Child's Play. Yeah.
Well, I do have some nice news if we do nice news on this show, which is Catherine.
Unprecedented.
Yeah, Catherine Hicks, who's the mom in Child's Play. She's just one of the just most likable actors out there, I think, from Seventh Heaven. Just seems like a really cool lady. So she marries her husband, who is one of the designers of Chucky and one of the special effects designers of him. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, they've been together since 1990, married. Isn't that nice?
Yeah,
That's so nice.
Sweet. Chucky bringing people together.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are, that show, Seventh Heaven, 242 episodes.
Well,
Yeah. And
Legion.
just like the Cosby Show.
Yeah, right.
Better remembered than experienced. And let's not dig too deep on what's going on with these people.
Such a sweet legacy left with us with Seventh Heaven.
Yeah, buy the box set and just put it on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
And walk away. Goodbye, box set.
That's right.
Well, there we go. That's. I think this has been a really interesting conversation. You guys, thank you for bringing your thoughts to this first Frights exploration. And now we've broken the seal on 3 great big franchises. If you ever want to go back to the well, I'm in. And next month, this is the brave New Year month of January.
Mm-hmm.
It's Keenan.
Oh, yes. I'm excited for this. I'm hoping this might be a recurring sort of theme that I might do every January going into February, about the interrelationship between horror, terror, and sex and lust. I hope you're excited to join me on this. So this one I'm calling Sexy Monsters. And I think we'll come back to and do sexy aliens, sexy vampires, etc. But right now we'll start with 3 movies that are about relationships or sex or marriage. We're going to do Andrei Zulawski's Possession, which is about, marriage and some kind of monster demon thing. It's in the title. She's possessed.
There's
okay.
possession.
Yeah, there's possession. And then we will do Mike Nichols's Wolf with Jack Nicholson and James Spader and Michelle Pfeiffer. It's also in the title. He's a wolf. And then end that with a more overt comedy, I think, that's about sex and the male gaze, and that's Karen Kusama's Jennifer's Body.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be seeing what is it to be scared while also kind of turned on, or maybe a lot turned on and a little scared. We'll see how that goes in those 3 movies.
Do we have to answer truthfully?
Yeah, I'm going to send you out little survey monkeys.
Does anyone do that thing with the cigarette where they put it in their mouth? And vroom, vroom.
I have a feeling that on the first day, whatever movie James Spader is on, he shows that to the director, and they just have never let him do it.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to that, Keenan. That looks like a great series. Can't wait for that. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. Thank you all for downloading and listening to the show. We appreciate your time and attention. Make sure you do the stuff that podcasts are made of. And if you are interested in supporting the show and becoming a member, getting early access to these fine episodes, we'd love you to do that. Just head over to truestory.fm/join And you can select any one of the True Story shows, but look for the Next Reel family of film podcasts and support this show. You'll get all kinds of good stuff.
Join
becoming a member there.
We have such sights to show you.
Yes.
Such streams you will stream.
TrueStory.fm/join will tear your soul apart.
But not your wallet.
Okay. On behalf of Kyle and Tommy and Keenan, I'm Pete Wright. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next month, Sitting in the Dark.
Hey Pete, have you ever been fascinated by the allure of secret societies throughout history?
Are you kidding me right now, Andy? I live for this stuff. From the Freemasons to the Illuminati, I am obsessed with these clandestine groups. The Rosicrucians and their ancient wisdom, the Skull and Bones Society at Yale with its powerful alumni network. I'm drawn to them. There's something about how they offer this exclusive access to hidden knowledge. They totally capture my imagination. It's like they give this sense of belonging to something greater than oneself.
Wow, sounds like you're looking for one yourself.
Do you even need to ask? Where do I sign? How much blood do I have to give? Are there any required tattoos or brands involved? Is it my first or second born that they need?
Well, what if I told you that there's a secret society for film lovers right here at the Next Reel family of film podcasts, all proud members of the True Story FM network, and you don't have to give any blood or either of your kids?
You've got my attention, Andy. What can you tell me about this cinematic brotherhood?
When you become a member of the Next Reel family, you gain access to a treasure trove of exclusive content, early episode releases, and a community of passionate film enthusiasts who share your love for movies. It's like being initiated into a secret order where you're privy to the inner workings of our shows, including the Next Reel, the Film Board, Movies We Like, Sitting in the Dark, and CinemaScope.
But Andy, as a member, will I unlock a world of bonus content from extended conversations and behind-the-scenes insights to exclusive pre-show and post-show discussions that expand the conversations about the films we love?
Why, yes, the true power of this secret society lies in its community. As a member, you'll join an exclusive group within our Discord community where you can engage in clandestine conversations with other passionate film fans in our members-only channels.
But what about live recordings, Andy? The sacred rituals of any good cinematic order. Will these episodes be scheduled in advance so that members like me will know when to gather around the virtual pyre in real time via YouTube?
Ah, yes. Perhaps the greatest secret of all is that by becoming a member, you're not just investing in your own entertainment, you're also supporting the tireless work of our independent creators and helping to keep the magic of cinema alive and well. So if you're ready to join this elite group of film lovers and unlock the secrets of cinema, head over to truestory.fm/join. For just $5 a month or $55 a year, you will gain access to a world of exclusive content, engaging discussions, and a community that shares your passion for movies. Head to truestory.fm/join to sign up.
Andy, I can't wait for you to welcome me into the inner circle of the Next Reel family of film podcasts. I'll see you in the secret chambers. Now, when do I get my ring?
Well, we don't actually offer rings with your membership.
Tattoos or brands? When can I do that?
No tattoos.
Secret handshakes?
Tell you what, you and I can come up with our own secret handshake, okay?
No, I mean, at the very least. Are you tired of endlessly scrolling through streaming services?
Ugh, it is such a time waster.
Well, have you ever heard of Letterboxd?
No, what's that?
It's a platform where you can track and rate films, create watch lists. It's the perfect social network for movie lovers.
That sounds amazing. It's like Film Facebook.
Well, that last thing sounds dumb, but if you like the idea, say goodbye to bad movies and hello to your quintessential watch list.
Are you thesaurusing right now?
Just use the discount code NEXTREEL or visit thenextreel.com/letterbox to get 20% off your pro or patron membership. And that works for renewals as well.
Awesome. I am definitely signing up for a patron membership today.
Great. Start curating your movie collection with Letterboxd.